Hi, this is Ken from Cadimage. In this session we're going to look at an introduction to our Cadimage Objective Tool. Very first things first, Objective, there's two parts to it. The first one, if we go to the top of the screen here, we have our Objective pull-down menu, and this has some commands that are menu driven and also the help function. But in addition to that, we then have three tools added to the toolbox. So we have the framing tool, which is where we get access to the library and objects that are part of Objective. We have the extrusion tool, where we access and set up our extrusions and control them. And then also I've grouped it alongside the slab tool up here. We have slab edges. These may be in a different order on your screen. I've shuffled them around because I think logically slab edges go alongside slabs. And then the framing, the extrusions library go alongside the object tool. But obviously you're free to move that as much as you need to. So as I mentioned, there's various bits, there's 4 bits in fact, that make up Objective that we're going to look at here. We have the objects, we have the tools, the extrusions, and then the slab edges. And what I've done is I've sort of picked out a sample for each one. So starting off with the timber and steel library, what I've got here is just a sample of some stuff that I've put together. So some very simple beams and posts and bits of steel and bits of wood. And these are driven from this framing icon in the toolbox. And what we'll see if we go in here, we have 3 folders that make up the Objective library, so there's modelling stuff, there's nothing in there just yet. There's a steel library, which is where we can go and grab various bits of steel, etc. Now if I do go grab something like a steel column, there's a couple of important things to point out. Obviously you have controls for the profile and for the path, but if we go take a look at the settings up here, we can actually choose a localised standard. So we have British standards, New Zealand and US standards. So if I go for something like this here, British standard universal beam, we can go and grab from a catalogue size of whatever one we actually want in here. So let's grab that one, and what that'll do is resize and set all the components based on the manufacturer's data. We have all the usual controls you'd expect to be able to control the surfaces, the pens for plan view for section, etc, etc. In addition to the steel library, there's also a timber library. Now we can go in here and again, similar controls. So obviously there's not standardised sizing for this because it's bits of wood rather than bits of steel, but we can grab these and play around with them as we require. One of the nice things about using the tools in this way, if I go back to 2D, something I tend to do quite a lot is use the select all command. So just Command A or Control A if it was a PC, to be able to select everything. Now, because these aren't regular objects, I know I can quite easily grab the framing tool, do Command A, I'm on a Mac, and it goes and picks up these items. I have to be careful because this model does actually have a load of other stuff set up here that I'm about to show you, so I still have to be a little bit careful it doesn't select other things, but I know that that's picking up these and it's not going to pick up chairs or tables or other bits and pieces from the general library. So we have an alignment tool, and what that allows me to do is if I just go and start to pick up some items here and then just have a play with them. So we'll take that and move it across there, we'll take that and move it down to here, take that one and move it up, and we'll take this one and we'll just move that across to there somewhere. What alignment does is gives me the option to take all these items. We use the Objective menu. Under alignment, we have various options. So what it can do is align centre, and it'll align on the y-axis. And what it does is pull them all back together and line them up. There's also further options. If I go into the alignment settings, we can actually save a preset in here, but we can choose, do I want to align, maybe this time distribute from the x-axis. From, well, let's just say distribute them equally, align them centrally on the y-axis, and the z-axis, we can ignore those. And what it does this time is go and line up all the objects across the whole shape. If we look at assemblies and extending that functionality, what I can do is grab this little lot, have a look at 3D, you can see how it comes together. So it's pretty straightforward in this case because there's not much detail in here, but if you imagine this whole thing was at an angle, it was on a roof plane or something like that, working with it then you're not really plan, you're not really section. Here I can work between elevation and plan view, but there are times when we've got odd angles, it's quite nice to be able to flip things around and set them out horizontally to be able to work with them. So what we can do with the assembly is if I just select, it looks as if it's a group, but in actual fact it's using the assembly function up here, and what I can do is say go to plan. And what that'll do then is rotate that back into its home position, which is the plan view down here. And what I can then do is if I suspend the groups, I can pick up, I can move elements. Let's just take a copy of that. Let's just rotate this whole thing around. Come across to there. And maybe we'll do the same with this one here. We'll drag that around, take that off up, join it in up here somewhere. Some of the other commands we'll look at, we can see how we can tidy them up and trim them, etc. But you can see I've messed around with the whole shape. If I was to go back to 3D just now, it's kind of broken because I've rotated the thing around, I've disassembled almost. So what I'm going to do is, with it all selected, go back to Objective, and in the assembly, I'm going to go back to the model view. And it's really simple to use this. There's two options here. We have set the plan view, set the plan home, set the model home, and all we do is rotate in between to choose what they actually are. So now that I've set the plan, it's horizontal, and the model is vertical, I can just switch between the two, and then in here we can choose to create new ones, update them, or detach them, etc. But what I want to do is just go back to the model. That then flips it back into place, and when we look at the whole thing in 3D, you can see it's now updated to show these changes that I've made to the overall thing. So that's a taster in there. If we now go and look at some of the tools, these are a couple of the tools, probably the smallest little functions that Objective does, but actually some of the most powerful ones. So the first one, really simple. I want to rotate a chair, which I'm sure you all know, you've just seen me do it. We can pick up rotate command, we get a little symbol that allows us to rotate it around. But the limitation of this is we can only rotate on the plan view. Even in 3D, it's only going to be rotating around about the Z-axis, so it's just going to be horizontal. The objective rotate command, on the other hand, is a little bit different. So if I grab it, and then just pick up here, and say, there's my default angle, and I want to just bring it around, and I'm just randomly going to click. You'll see as I do that, the symbol immediately changes to show me a plan view projection of that chair. So I've got it not bad, I'm almost looking at a vertical back on that chair now. So I spun the whole thing round. As another example, we can go here and we can take this chair and in fact leave it where it is, because what I will do is I'll switch to an elevation view of it. Take that elevation, grab tools, rotate, and this time I'm going to rotate the whole thing in the elevation view. And off it goes and recalculates, and you can see where it's down there. So it's really actually quite a powerful tool. I drop back to the 2D, you can see the projected plan view of that. I can carry on, so I can actually go tools, rotate, spin it around again. So we have another completely different angle. But one of the beauties of this, and this is something that's just impossible to do with the standard Archicad tools, once I've done something like this, what I want to do is go back to the settings, and I still have all the parameters that I had previously. So we could go change, let's make the red bits purple, the blue bits black or grey, the yellow bits cadmium orange, and the black bits we'll make bright yellow. So okay, that obviously it doesn't change here, but when we go to the elevation view, that updates and we can see them. So I've been able to completely manipulate that object but still retain the features. The same is true when we look at the split command. So here's another intact example of the chair, it's not been rotated. What I want to do with it, go to tools and say split. And I'm just going to randomly define a line through here, there to there, click on this side, that keeps that part selected. We can just move it off to the side if we want. We can grab this chair, we can look at the settings, you'll see those are identical to the ones I had previously, but it's only half a chair. And the same is true on this other side. Grab this, same functionality. So we can split things up really quite nicely. However, once I've broken something up or split something up, if we're looking at traditional workflow, you'd probably go into something like a morph, so you'd have a little bit of control over it in standard Archicad, but once you've done it, you can't undo it, because it's then separate items. These are two halves of a chair that have been split, and what I can do is just grab both bits any time at all, and decide Objective Tools. And there's a few options we can repair. We can set a display order, but what I want to do is remove the cuts. And what that does is revert them back to their original object. And again, all the control, all the functionality is still here. So it's really quite a nice thing to be able to do with it. A more practical example is something like this here, where I have a bit of a steel assembly. Now I've already done the cuts on this side, so you can see these beams are nicely mitered. But the far side, where you can see what's going on, the two of them overlap, and it's not the way it should be. So all we do is pick up this component, grab our tools, split, and we're just going to define a line from there to there. Keep that little bit selected because I'm just going to delete it. Take this beam, repeat the process. So this time from there to there, keep that side selected, delete that little bit, and I'm left with a nice clean join. And if we go back, you can see in 3D, again they've been fixed. So that's probably more of a practical example than chopping up a chair. Next thing we can do with something like this is just take these objects and bend them. So not something you can do with standard objects and beams, but we just go and grab, and this time say bend, and then we just say, well, bend it outwards, bend it inwards, whatever I want to do, take it out of there, and off it goes. Probably going to have to spend some time sorting out these junctions, but you can see what's actually happening with it. In addition to bend, there's also offset. So here we have our beam. Now I'll just check, is this a straight one or is this a curved one? So this is a straight one. You could do the same with the curved one as well, but basically all I'm going to do with it is grab it, find the objective menu, and this time say offset. I'm going to take that corner and offset it down to there. So let's take the top one, Objective Tools, offset that one, and this time we'll move it up to here somewhere. So I've just copied this up here to give me something else to take a look at. If we go back and look at the 3D, I've lost the bottom one from the selection. Let's just try and bring everything in. Ignore the stuff in the background, but you can see how I've actually been able to split and completely change the position and the shape of these bits and pieces here. And obviously we could spend more time to cut the edges and trim everything and tidy it all up. But again, that'll give you a little bit of a taster. So moving on from the tools functions, we'll take a look at extrusions and what they can do. So extrusions is a separate toolbox entry. When you're defining an extrusion, the first thing you have to do is define the profile and then you extrude it. A couple of little rules with it. If you use a fill pattern, what you'll see is we get a solid shape. And if we use a polyline, then what we'll end up with is a completely hollow shape. So that's the only thing to bear in mind with it. I'm going to use a solid one, and I'm going to create a new profile to begin with. So the way that works is we go to the objective menu, and this time we're working with components, and we're going to create what's called a new profile. So we have four types, plus extrusion. We have our elevation, our section, and our lathe profile, and those can be used to produce different types of shape. The one we're looking at here is the fourth one, extrusion, and in this case I want to create really technical name, so we'll have a ceiling moulding thingy. A couple of options with it. We can choose to put this in the embedded library, we can put it in the Archicad libraries. I don't want to do that really, so we'll leave it in the embedded library. That can always be extracted later if you need to use it in another project, but right now it's perfect for what I'm using. We can choose to place the new profile. Don't actually want to do that yet because I want to extrude it along a path, and we can choose to delete the selected item. Again, I don't want to do that because quite like it there, spent time putting it there, so I'm going to leave it in that place because, as I say, I'm going to use it separately. So now once we've hit OK, we have to set an anchor point. So because this is going to be attached to a ceiling, I'm going to set the anchor point as this corner here because that's the logical place where a wall and a ceiling or a roof item would come together. So we click, and that's it actually finished. If I now go to the extrusion tool and double click, then what we'll see is there's one that I made earlier, but there's also this brand new ceiling moulding thingy that I've just created. There's a number of parameters with it. We have controls over things like the surfaces. I will make that the bright yellow because that tends to stand out pretty well and you see the shadows quite nicely and can easily see what's going on. We can set all the 2D stuff, and there are some controls we can use with the shape. For the path, we have options where we can actually rotate the profile, we can choose different anchor points, and we can also choose to angle or incline the profile itself. But let's just keep it simple. hit OK, and what I want to do is just draw the shape. So I'm literally just going to click up here. As soon as I start, you'll see this extrusion placement panel appears, and if you've looked at our stair or railing tool, you'll notice it's a very similar pet palette. We have 5 buttons that give us our options to have straight edge or 4 different types of curve, and slightly different from stairs. We have an option for a Z value if we want to take the extrusion above where I happen to be right now. However, all I want to do is just a simple profile so you can see it. So literally click to start, click the next point, move to the next point, carry on, and we can go around this all day long. But if I make a mistake, standard Archicad rules apply. Whatever I'm going to do here, I'm not going to hit the escape key because that would cancel the whole thing. Obviously, if I did want to cancel, then carry on and hit escape. But I'm just going to press backspace to take me back to this point here because I want to finish at that point. And all I do is just click on that same point again, does a little bit of calculation, and bingo, we now have our 3D profile. So you can see the shape and how the whole thing works. The next example, I've kind of given it away a little bit. It's just a cable tray, so it's just a different type of example, but starts in the same way. I have a fill pattern that defines the profile. I need to zoom in a bit closer to about here probably. And then what I'm going to do is, same process, I'm going to create a new profile, and this is going to be it's going to be a suspended cable tray, I guess. Suspended cable tray, and it's going to embedded library and same options as before. Click the OK button. This time for the anchor point, what I'll do is I'll go to the very middle here, but then I'll just go Y 200 plus. And what that does is that finishes the guideline stays, which is quite useful. But you can see where the ceiling would be when I anchor it, and that obviously provides access to be able to get in and out of the cable tray and place things. So that's the first step, is creating the profiles. Another little example, but let's have another look at a different example. So I'm going to create another path, this time just freehand. So extrusions, and I'll just grab the same one as before. So just a couple of little things. We'll start to draw. We have the straight edges, I did that already. We then have the curved options. So we can go and do these sort of things. And depending on the shape we've got, we might want to do a 3-point arc. So that'll determine the radius, and then we can set the angle. And then we can close it back off where we started. So we click again on the end point, and off it goes and calculates and tidies up for us. So we can do that sort of stuff quite nice and easy to do freehand. A different way to approach this though is maybe to use a polyline as a base to do the extrusion. So this time what I'll do is I'll grab the suspended cable tray, and we will set its height to 2500. So it'll actually be 200mm below that to the top surface of the cable tray. So the anchor point's 2.5 meters. What I can do with it is just hold down space, click on this polyline, and you'll see off it goes and creates the shape around about the building. So if I just marquee this off, you can see now, running around the building, we have the cable tray. And if I decide that I don't like the colour or the surface, we can always come back in and we can change this into something else. Let's go perforated small dots. There we go, looks much better now. So we can play around with this, but obviously I've got a bit of an issue here because I need to either punch some holes in the wall or I need to do something else to change the profile so that it actually goes over the obstruction. So back in 2D, I'm going to use same tool, just check, yep, 2500, okay that, and this time I'm going to draw freehand, so just from here, and what I'll do is I'll come across to about here. We're at 2500, so let's actually take the height now up to 3000, bring the mouse back down here, take it across to there, drop it back to the 2500, and I'll just come over, return, and bring it down to end here somewhere. So I've still bashed through this next piece of wall, but hopefully you'll see the geometry's got a few little bits on here. And what we can do with those is if we just look at but you can see how the tray then comes up and extends over and then carries on round on the other side. With that selected, you'll see there's a few points on it, and these actually allow us to edit the path. So what I'm able to do is pull some of these points around a little bit. So now what you'll see is I've actually extended that outwards, so we have more of a slope coming up to control how it goes over the obstruction that's in the way of the path there. If we go into the settings though, again similar to our stairs and railings, we have a couple of options for graphic editing. So we can look at the first one, which is insert nodes, and then we'll come back and look at the other one, which allows us to create curves and adjust the arcs. So when insert nodes, what that does is put on a couple of extra control points in the middle of each section. So what I can actually do here is, let's say we'll have a point there, we'll have another point over here somewhere, we'll create one point down around here, and then we'll have another one that's over the top of that there. So again, another quick look at 3D, and you can see how the whole thing behaves. Into the settings, we'll switch on arc editing, and this time what we can do is pick up, and we can add curves to these points here, so we could actually curve that section of tray out there. That one's going to become a bit messy because it's very, very tight with the neighbours, but you get the idea of what's physically possible with that there. So the last thing to look at is, once I've done all of this, I've got this cable tray all over the place. It might be I decide that actually I need a smaller branch or a different version or something else. So really what I want to do is draw a new profile, but I don't want to draw the whole thing from scratch because it already exists inside this object. So if I take this object, this profile, what we can actually do is go to the menu, into component, and there's an option here to extract the profile. And what that does is attach itself to the end of the mouse. We can take that somewhere else, drop it down, and then if I just grab the marquee, let's just take that, we will just take a point and shrink it by 100mm. We'll take the top of it, and we'll shrink that down by 25mm. And there we have a new profile, still the same thickness, still the same detail for the ends and things, but I can take that and I can create a new profile from that. That allows me then to place it as many times as I want. Anywhere there's a path that's already been placed, you can extract the profile from it. Even if it's in the library, if you place a small piece of it, again you can extract it, edit it. So if I now take a look at slab edges, we'll run through some of the possibilities there. So the first thing, just something to define, is purely what happens or what the difference is when you're placing a slab edge, depending on if you click on an edge or if you click on a point. So I'll go to the slab edge tool. I'm not looking at the settings just now, just purely what happens. So if I click on an edge, let's go for that one there, what you'll see is 3 parallel lines appear. If I click on this edge, again, 3 lines. If I click on that one. So what's actually happening in this case is, by clicking on an edge, only that edge actually has condition, the edge surface, applied to it. So if I undo those, but this time click on a corner point, what happens now is the whole profile, the slab edge, is applied to the entire profile, the path, the shape of the slab that we're clicking on. So I've got different examples of the different types of objects, some of the things we can do with it. I'm not going to go through the placing them all because you pretty much saw what happens. You set it up and you either click on an edge or you click on a point and you're finished. So this one is the counter edge and the upstand. If I double click to take a look in the slab edge settings themselves, you'll see there's 5 objects. Counter edge is the first one. We have the upstands. We then have footing object, a rebate, and then some steps. So I'll take a look at some examples of each one of these. But back to this one here where we have the counter edge. You can see on the left there's one that I've finished already. So literally I have a carcass of a cabinet. I have a slab that's been placed to represent the countertop. And then what I've got on this side is exactly the same thing, but what I've done is I've picked out some of the different settings so you can see the different edge conditions and profiles that can be applied. So this one's all nice and smooth and polished, the surfaces and materials match. Here they're painted yellow just so they stand out. So you can see we can have rectangular, square edged, we can have chamfers, we can have fillets, and the same thing applies to the front edges. These also have some grips, some intelligent hotspots, and they allow us to take and extend upwards, or if I grab the corner, extend outwards beyond the shape that's already in place there. So if I grab this face, again, we can take that and extend it if we require. So those are nice and simple. Footing objects, the next one. we have 4 options: rectangular, the slope back, stepped, and bevel backed. Basically they look the same, but if we go to the section through, then you'll start to see the difference in them here. So here's the different types. They're not fixed in any way. If you want to play with the settings, you can always grab them, go into the settings, and you'll see there's controls here for the type, for the various dimensions, the key dimensions that are associated with it, what the base dimensions are, and then what the edge conditions happen to be. So one of the things, when I clicked on an edge, you saw some funny cuts on the ends. This example here shows something fairly typical. What you can actually do is you can tell it to cut square, and you'll see in the preview that gives you the correct symbols and lines to close all of that sort of stuff off. So there's a lot more behind the settings. There just isn't time to get into it in these sessions. Rebate's another example. So here we have the shape here. It looks like 2 slabs. In fact, what it is 1 slab with a rebate object applied to it. So if I go to the slab edge tool and select, you'll see that they're all here. We can go into the settings. We could say, let's just double these, make that 125, give that 50, and off it goes, and you can see it changes the shape. Another key thing with this, which I didn't really point out, is if I grab the base slab and take that edge and then just go offset, and then take this one and pull it backwards, the slab edges track with the shape. So when I go back to 3D, you can see how they appear. And if we do little things like, again, grab the slab, let's maybe make it 210 thick at the moment, let's make it 400 thick. We have overrides, let's make it all bright yellow. Then the whole thing updates and plays along with the base shape. So there's a link between the elements, you don't have to worry about updating things afterwards. The last option here is the steps. So we have 3 different options: vertical, angled, and angled risers with square nosings. And they can either rise away from a slab or they can fall down from the slab. So in 3D, this is what it looks like. So we can see the square nosings and the verticals, and angled. So as a bit of an example, here we have a slab that's already placed and I want to put a footing on it. What I'm going to do is go into the settings. Now, because we're short of time, I'm just going to grab a favourite that's already been saved. That gives me the settings. And literally to apply it, all I do is click OK, come find a corner, click the mouse, and off it goes. It puts the footing down. So there's lots of stuff going on there. It's not too easy to see. But if we go to 3D, you can see we have now dirty big footing underneath. If we take a cut through there, it's a little bit easier to see what's actually going on. As another example, I've got a wall that's already placed with a slab. There's a bit of an edge and a gap in there. We're going to fix that in a second. All we do, back into slab edges, I'm going to grab my favourites, example 2, and this should create a set of steps which are all set up and all ready to go. And all I do is hit OK, find a corner, give it a click, and off it goes and adds the steps around there. And what we're looking for is now a nice completed pool with steps down on all sides. And obviously when we wind it up, you can see the effect with the beautiful tile mosaic and the wavy water, just the way we want it to be. That's a bit of a final example to give you a taste of the range of some of the objects, some of the tools and functions we can actually do with Objective. So the last thing is just a quick thank you for watching the session, and if you need any more information on the tools, Objective or any other tools and services we provide, you can take a look on our main website, which is www.cadimage.com. Thanks for your time.